I'm going to spend just a quick moment introducing our webinar series, Etiquette, for everybody who is joining us today. This is a standard practice for all of our Master Naturalist webinars, our TMN Tuesdays, and our Be the Change. So we're just going to make sure that we've covered the bases on our tech check, and then also with our etiquette and how we're going to interact today. So with our Be the Change series and our use of WebEx, if you're new to this platform as an attendee, don't worry, you're not able to unmute or show your video, but that is on purpose. Sometimes on these events, we have over 1,000 attendees, and we want to make sure that we're providing a conducive environment for our speaker to be able to conduct the training, but we also want to make sure that you're given an opportunity to interact, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. If you are joining us and you've noticed that I've now changed 2 slides and my mouth is moving, but you still can't hear us, you want to make sure that you've plugged in your speaker, you've turned the volume all the way up. You can't hear me saying that if you can't hear me, but hopefully you're seeing the screen and you're able to make those adjustments based off of the instructions on this screen. And hopefully by now you've joined us a few other times so that you've made any tech arrangements that you need to make. We always have a WebEx helpline as well, a phone number that you can call if you're still having issues or you've got a new system and you need to set it up, or if you've got some questions, check out that FAQs page. It's a great resource for using our WebEx tool. With today's presenter, we're going to be using chat. Our chat function is open right now. If you have not noticed, I've sent a couple of things in the chat. If you've been on here since earlier, I'm going to drop something in the chat so that you can find that. Our chat tool is going to be open for all discussion, all on-topic, professional and respectful discussion based off of today's topic. Please use full and clear sentences so that we know what you're trying to communicate and so that we can help to provide the best answers to the questions that you may be putting into that chat. Also, to help make sure that we've opened the communication to everybody on that chat function, make sure that you've selected to everyone. Okay, and then just wrapping up our webinar etiquette for today's event. As always, attendees are not able to unmute or share their videos, but we are using our chat function to ask questions, have discussion, and interact with the speakers today. That chat function is open for on-topic discussion only. Please be respectful and professional in all comments and discussion in that chat. If you are a Master Naturalist attending this session either live or watching the recording, can count for 1 hour of advanced training. Please work with your local chapter VMS admin to get that added to your VMS role, your log. If you're still having, and then the recording will be posted on their website by the end of today or early tomorrow morning. If you're still having tech issues, that website also has some great tools and resources on it as well. All right, and with that, I'm not going to take up any more time. Michelle, I'm going to let you introduce the topic of today.
Sure. For everyone joining us today, you are joining our Be the Change series. Our session today is called Bridging the Gap, Getting New Audiences Outdoors in the Rio Grande Valley. And just a reminder, if you want to move to the next slide, our Be the Change series was developed as a mini webinar series and a sub webinar to our TMN Tuesdays events that we started offering this year. Our series is dedicated to exploring all avenues and all issues revolving around diversity, equity, and inclusion in our natural resource and conservation community, not only for our own chapters, but other conservation and natural resource organizations that can use the information as well. As a reminder, just as with the natural world, diversity is important in all of our communities, including our human community too. So we invite everyone to think about the the well-rounded issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion as they relate to our chapters, the communities we serve, and the public we engage with as master naturalists. One of the efforts of our Be the Change series is what we're calling our playbook. And we have many of our past and upcoming presenters will be giving us resources, information, and further reading that can be put into the playbook. And it's available, that playbook is available as just as I mentioned, further reading, additional resources to help you, your community, your organization, and Master Naturalist chapter get started in discussing these diversity, equity, and inclusion issues as they relate to your chapter and your natural resource community. And so just on our website, Mary Pearl's already dropped the link there to our Be the Change playbook. All the information from our past sessions are there, and then we'll get information from today's session in an update. While you're here, we want to invite you to join us for our September TMN Tuesdays. The next one is taking place September 14th. Those happen the second Tuesday of the month. And then also our Be the Change series, our September edition will take place September 21st. So we welcome everybody online today to join us for those sessions as well. As mentioned, each of these TMN Tuesdays and the Be the Change series counts as advanced training for our Master Naturalists. And if you want to move to the next slide. And speaking of advanced training, not only do our monthly webinars count as advanced training for our Master Naturalists, but we also have our biggest advanced training of the year coming up with our annual meeting, October 21st to the 24th. It'll be a hybrid annual meeting where we'll be having an in-person meeting along with virtual registration as well. So something for everyone with our annual meeting. Registration is open now. Mary Pearl has just dropped the link in the chat for those of you who are interested in learning more about our annual meeting, and you can register from that page as well. So everyone is invited. You don't have to be a Master Naturalist to enjoy our annual meetings. In fact, it's one of the ways we get the most enthusiastic members as new people joining us through our annual meeting. So we invite you to share with us at this year's event. And then next slide. So with this Be the Change series, we've been working with a committee that have been helping us organize and put together this webinar series for you. One of the members on that committee is Tony Heenahan, and Tony was gracious enough to suggest our featured speaker today. And so I would like to ask Tony to introduce Javier for us.
Thanks, Michelle. So I've been fortunate enough to work with Javier for the past 5.5 years now, and he immediately came to mind with this speaker series. He's the current superintendent at Estero Llano Grande State Park here in West Loco in the Valley. However, he did not grow up camping, hunting, or bird watching, which we're not going to hold against him, but he always wanted to try those things since he was very young. As soon as he got a job and a reliable car in his early 20s, he confirmed his love for the outdoors and decided to pursue a career with them. 20-ish years later, he's still as passionate about being outside, but he leads others to do the fun stuff with the plants and animals. He's a founding member of the RGV Nature Partnership. It's a current board member for the Association of Nature Center Administrators, a past member of several Parks and Wildlife internal advisory committees, and the TPWD Master Naturalist Chapter Advisor for the RGV chapter and South Texas border chapters. And with that, Javier, please take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Let me get my PowerPoint loaded up. I'm going to wave hi before I disappear here real quick. And let's get this loaded up. So thank you, Tony, and Michelle, and Mary Pearl for having this series, and Tony for thinking of me for this. One, I'm always really excited and happy to be presenting for the Master Naturalist, although usually it's for training every year for new students. So this is a little bit different, but this topic, I guess I should start off with, this is, talking about diversity is not my main job, but it is something that I'm pretty passionate about. And much of this presentation is from a keynote presentation that me and Marisa Oliva from the Edinburgh Birding Center and Gisela Chopper from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge, presented to the Wildlife Viewing and Nature Tourism Conference a couple of years ago. This conference had folks from all over the country, folks that were in charge for tourism, nature tourism for their states, and we wanted to give them a kind of a glimpse of just how we've, between different nature centers in the valley, have promoted the outdoors to a new audience, basically, just to get, anyway, I'll get into it here in a little bit. A little bit more about myself. So I'm here from the Valley. I began bird watching around 2001-ish, and I was quickly sucked in, started volunteering at different nature sites in 2003. In 2005, I joined the Rio Grande Valley chapter as a master naturalist, and something that I've heard lots of times, and I still think it's true. I found my people with the master naturalist, other folks that are friendly and they care about reaching out, working in the community, and benefiting natural resources and talking to others. So that's me. This is a rare glimpse of me without a beard from 2005 when I got my 100-hour pin. And don't look at my hours because I don't think I reached 250. I was going to school around that time, to university, and working overnight, an overnight job from midnight to 8 o'clock. So between school and work, I didn't volunteer so much. But anyway, eventually started working in nature centers in 2005 through today. During that time, became the chapter advisor for 2 chapters, RGV chapter and then South Texas Border when they broke off and joined their own chapter, or made their own chapter. And yeah, right now I'm a board member for ANCA and founding member of RGV Nature Partnership. Like Tony said, I used to do the fun stuff. I'm in the front here kneeling with a group of birders when I was a naturalist interpreter, taking trips down to El Cielo with the Edinburgh Birding Center. So I think we just finished looking at some tropical birds near El Cielo, near the Mocotoma River, before we went to look at more tropical birds. Fun stuff. Here, this is more recent. This is a training class on a field trip to Sable Palm Sanctuary. So that was a lot of fun. I think there was a lot of mosquitoes that morning, but anyway, we're all smiling, at least for 1/500th of a second. So a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. I wanted to talk about the Rio Grande Valley as a place, and the nature it has, some of the people and the different places. Those places being the 22 nature sites, staffed nature sites for the most part, in the lower 4 counties of Texas. That's called the Rio Grande Valley. And 22 nature sites, where are the locals? And after that, thinking about how Rio Grande Valley people interact with nature, what have we learned? What have, what successes, what failures have we had, and how you can take some of what we've learned and kind of translate that to your chapter, what you do in your chapter, how to reach out to new folks, how to introduce new folks into what we do. So hopefully you can see some of the things we've tried and use it in your chapter and in what you do. So I'll try not to, I can talk about the valley and nature all day, so I'll try to make this quick. But here's Texas. Rio Grande Valley's down there, if you didn't know. For anybody joining from the Panhandle, I'm sorry I cut you off. the top couple counties there. The Rio Grande Valley, it's the only land connection that's this far south in the U.S., the only land connection to the tropics. If you go south 5 hours, we reach the Tropic of Cancer, and below that you get into like really tropical birds like the northern jacana up here. Because we're so close and we're connected by land, our diversity, our biodiversity is really high. So over 500 species of birds, which includes tropical birds and migratory birds. Butterflies, a big chunk of the country's butterflies can be found down here, including many tropical species. And dragonflies were not as biodiverse in some places, but there are some tropical species, and of course tropical plants that are found here and nowhere else. Even though there's very unique plants and animals down here, those organisms are kind of clinging to the little habitat that there is left here in the valley. So there's 1 million people. I think the estimate's 1.3 million people in the lower 4 counties down here. So you have to balance nature and people. A lot of development in this area since the early 1900s. This report, you can find it online for free somewhere. Last time I checked, it was available as a PDF. It's 1988. This is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Report, and they quantified how much habitat is left. So in 88, the blue section here shows, the Tamaulipan brushland is a unique ecosystem found only in South Texas and Northeast Mexico. Many plants and animals occur here that are found nowhere else in the United States. Since the early 1900s, 95% of native Tamaulipan brushland has been cleared for agriculture, urban development, recreation, and in riparian areas, 99% of native brush has been destroyed. So, those unique animals live in very limited spaces for the most part. Around this time that this report was done, I should mention tree piles is something that we see often, even today, just places cleared out. Recently, people are clearing out agricultural fields more than large swaths of brush because those swaths of brush are gone. So, really quick, this is a Google Earth image of kind of the mid to upper valley between Weslaco and Donna on the right side of the screen and Mission on the left, McAllen in the middle here. What I want y'all to look at, can y'all see my mouse, Tony or Mary Pro?
Yes.
Okay. So starting here on the right, we have Weslaco just off screen, agricultural fields, and then the town of Donna, ag fields, Alamo, ag fields. Big swath of ag fields here between Farr, McAllen, and Edinburgh. More ag fields between Mission and McAllen and Mission. Along the river, this is that jagged yellow line here, or the curvy yellow line. We have Benson State Park, nice 700 acres here of habitat. 2 fish and wildlife tracks next to Anselduas Dam. Reynosa with about 600,000 people, 400,000 people down there, jam-packed in there. Reynosa, a lot of people say there's no history down here, but Reynosa was established in the 1740s. And then Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge over here. So these little green spots are habitat. And then International Bridge right here, a little bit of light industry here and here. We're going to fast forward to 2016. And just in those 30-ish years, you can tell that things have grown a bit. So between Weslaco and Donna, all the way to Mission, up to Edinburgh, it's just developed. And that's just from the 80s. So lots of ag, which, not the best habitat, but still, some habitat around there. It's just developed. This area, the last spot. It's there's a big industrial park there now, and just really developed everywhere. U.S. Fish and Wildlife took their own advice and started buying up farmland, started revegetating these tracts that they bought along the river, and now Benson State Park used to be 700 acres of just habitat there, but now it's surrounded by 1,000 acres of habitat that was used to be farmland, revegetated in the mid 90s, and now there's about 3,000 acres of just continuous habitat, which is great. So yeah, lots of changes, and it's really important that these animals. It's a unique place, unique animals, and what an opportunity for all these people that live throughout the valley. What an opportunity to educate them, and what can everybody do to make a positive change? Can there be an urban forest if everybody plants a couple of trees? Where they're at, can we have eventually green jays and chachalacas in everybody's backyard? Which is my end goal, and maybe Tony's too. So there's lots of education, and that's why Master Naturalists are so important, because they help educate folks, and nature sites too. So if we're talking about these animals, tourism is very important in the local economy. This is a A&M. You see ecotourists there on the deck here at Acero. This A&M report came out in 2011. It's probably due for a renewal to get new numbers, but this also looked at what the economic contribution to ecotourism is for the valley. And according to this, ecotourists bring in about $344 million to the local economy, about 4,400 jobs, and lots of sales tax and lots of hotel tax. Real quick, this owl, I was just talking to a birder from Pennsylvania over the weekend who's coming in October, and they're coming for that one owl. That's their main target, and some other stuff down here. So many of you all know this. People travel to come down here. So for habitat protection and for ecotourism, there's a big concentration of nature centers in the valley. 22 nature sites. Each little butterfly, plant, and bird icon kind of represents where each of these are. So they're kind of spread out throughout the valley. And, like I said, some of these were created, like Laguna Atascosa and Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge, created specifically to save the habitat or retain that habitat for future generations. Others were for ecotourism or a mixture. Palo Alto Battlefield is a National Historic Site, but they have lots of really neat habitat there and wildlife. So, as nature centers, we have an opportunity to educate folks. But when you look at the visitation of the nature centers, does the visitation match the local community? So in the Rio Grande Valley, it's 90% Hispanic. So are the visitors in the parks 90% Hispanic? And the answer is no. I think, it's important to see, it's important for local people to enjoy their own parks in their own backyards. But the visitation pretty much it used to be about 50% Hispanic. Now it's about 75%, but still not 90%. So what do we do, or what can we do to increase local visitation so people know and care about their local parks? So with Parks and Wildlife, we have this graphic called the stair step to stewardship and advocacy. So this is for state park visitors, and how do we get advocates to protect our state parks. And this goes to all nature centers too. So it starts with an experience. You know, a visitor has to have a good experience at the park. Then the visitor becomes aware of that park. They might understand why the park is there, how special it is. And once they understand how special it is, they start caring about the park, caring about the habitat, the land. A lot of people might start caring for by volunteering or by contributing to the friends group, you know, and eventually, if something happened, you know, they want to be stewards of it and be advocates for the park. But it all starts for, you know, just to get people through the door, experience, awareness, and understanding. That's where, you know, that's where a lot of the work can take place. And that's where sometimes master naturalists come in and staff, because master naturalists help provide that experience, awareness, and understanding. And those 3 steps, you cannot get to the top steps unless you get those first. So those are very, very important. But for participation, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a really good website related to human dimensions. And that is basically, you know, how do people interact with parks and refuges? In order to get people that first experience, they have to participate. And participation is a general word. Participation could be people going to a park. It could be people joining a chapter. But for this slide, it makes more sense, you know, what is a barrier, or what are things that might come into play for somebody that's a not typical visitor to a park? What are some things that have come up in the past and often come up with new audiences to a park or a refuge? So some of these, historical racism. So in some places, you know, from the 70s, you know, past, you know, before the 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there are some places that people were not welcome. I mean, in black and white signs, you know, or separate entrances, separate but equal facilities, all that kind of stuff. So there's certain people that, you know, the places were not welcoming outright. You know, you didn't want certain people here. So, but historical racism, historical being the word here, is changed for the most part. Socioeconomic disparities. Some folks just did not have the funds to travel, to take place in leisure activities that might cost money. For example, paying entrance fees for a park. So there's some disparity there. It might be very difficult for people to go camping because they have to buy all the camping stuff, or, you know, they just didn't have a car, things like that. So there's some disparities there that were barriers for participation. Perceived racism. So even though the site may be welcoming now, you know, they're open for everybody, the perception is still there. The perception persists in, well, they didn't want us there 20 years ago. They say they're open now, but they still don't want me there. So that could be a barrier for people participating. Differences in cultural values and beliefs. Sometimes there's, you know, there's just some people interact with nature differently than others. And, you know, what's normal to some folks is not normal to others. And sometimes there can be friction there at the meeting point there. And acculturation experiences. So acculturation is interesting. Assimilation is when you're new to a place and you completely adopt the customs of the new place, and you basically, you know, you fall in line 100%, basically. Acculturation is when you're new to the country and you do the bare minimum to get by in the new area, but you still have I guess you cling to your old habits basically. You grew up in a certain culture, you want to continue that for future generations within your family. And sometimes that causes friction for nature sites. For example, when I grew up, I knew family that when they were going to make food, if they're going to go camping and they're going to be there for a couple of days, they're going to make some good food. So they're going to dig a pit and, dig a pit, put the fire in the pit, dig a hole that's 2 feet wide, 6 inches, 8 inches deep, put the fire down there and cook it in the pit. Can you do that at a state park? No. There's some ground disturbance issues there. When I was a kid, to give barbecue that really nice mesquite flavor, we would strip bark off mesquite trees and throw that in the fire. Is that allowable in nature sites to just go start stripping bark from trees? No. So there might be some friction there. That's for local Latinos. For other folks in different parts of the country, different countries from all over the world, I think I've heard of in certain parts of the country, in order for a boy to grow up, you have to sacrifice a goat. So would it be would it be allowable to bring a goat into a state park and kill the goat in this ritual of growing up? Probably not. So there's some friction that could be there, and that could be a barrier to participate. There's not a lot of goat killing in the valley, but anyway, I just brought it up as a story. Okay. Kind of tied into how different people view nature, there's a fantastic study done by David Case and his folks, and I think this has been brought up in recent presentations. It's called The Nature of Americans, and this looks at, I think they polled 12,000 folks, Americans, American adults, children, and parents, and they kind of got people's different understandings. Why do they go to nature? How they feel about nature? What stops them from going? And it's just really interesting, the differences in how people view the outdoors. One of my main takeaways from this study is the children. If you think of kids, when kids think of nature, actually, hold on, I'll back it up. When adults think of nature, if you say, I want to go see nature, some people might think, well, I got to go to Yosemite or Yellowstone to be surrounded by nature. Or I have to go, a minimum of 10 acres of just no power lines or phones or anything like that. For a child, nature could be a 10 by 10 foot space outside. It could be a tree. And that for them is nature. It's somewhere along the way, it completely changes. This is really interesting. And what I'm talking about today is kind of like this, but just for the Rio Grande Valley. So it's kind of a snapshot of what we found as nature sites. How RGV Latinos view nature, some of their perceptions, some of their constraints, and the interests, and how we've capitalized on those interests to get more people into the fold and get more people interested in the outdoors. So I love this picture. Sorry, I'm really glad it's slightly blurred, so you can't really tell who the little boy is. But anyway, it wasn't staged, completely on spur of the moment. Anyway, so perceptions, constraints, and interests. Perceptions. I'm going to have some quotes in here, or some sentences in quotes. Those are actual things that people have mentioned to me or some of the other Nature Center folks. And I'm just quoting people. These aren't my personal beliefs. So perceptions. A lot of people in the area think that they're not welcome. No one there at the site looks like me or speaks my language. If you arrive to a place and the first person, actually the first several people you see don't look like you or don't speak like you, or they're just different, do you feel welcome in that space? Yes or no? Sometimes it's important to just right off the bat create that sense of welcome for folks. And if they don't look like you, or if they look a little bit different, being welcoming goes a long way. Spaces are not built with my group in mind. Sometimes when Rio Grande Valley families go out, it's not mom, dad, and 2 kids. It's mom, dad, 3 or 4 kids, the single uncle, the the aunt and her friend, maybe great aunts coming along, grandma and grandpa, and you know what? We're going to go to the park, so we're going to bring the neighbor and his kid. So you might have a group of 10 people coming to a park. That group of people, they're going to go for a walk. Some, they're tired, and they find a picnic bench for 4 people. Some of these places, is a site ready to hold a large group of people? If there's a picnic bench here and one down the trail, and everybody wants to sit together as a group, well, they're going to start moving benches, and is that going to cause friction at the site? So sometimes spaces are not built with my group in mind, meaning some people think that they're not welcome because the place doesn't suit them. Sometimes families are very loud. They're out in nature, but the way they enjoy nature is by making fun of the single uncle because he never gets a girlfriend. Everybody laughs, and that might be a trouble because usually, especially a birding park, is usually very quiet. So that might create friction between that group and others. So if you go to a site, you've never been there before, it's your first experience, and you have random strangers telling you to be quiet, is that a positive experience? This was a version of this was told to me. Nature is for white people, we're not welcome. When I said the story, I think I was trying to invite a family into one of the nature sites, into the headquarters. And they said, "Oh no, it's not for us. That's for other people." And I said, "No, this is your nature center too." So there's a perception that that they are not; these spaces are not meant for everybody to enjoy, just a certain amount of people. Another perception: being outside is not civilized. Not being in air conditioning is for poor people. This I see. Not really. Maybe. I guess people with families, their parents or their grandparents looked down upon being outside at all. The parents or grandparents, maybe they grew up with no air conditioning, dirt floors. Now we have all these really nice things. So why do you want to go outside again? Spending time in the brush is for poor people looking for food. For young people, it's a waste of time, and going outside and volunteering isn't going to help you become a doctor or lawyer. So why would you go out there? It's you don't have any business looking at birds or being outside. So we kind of have to overcome that. We came from the fields. Why would we go back outside? Just something that a lot of people down here believe. And of course, this is universal for a lot of people that aren't used to being outside. Nature is dangerous or scary. There's snakes, spiders, scorpions everywhere, just waiting to jump on you from trees. And of course, if you don't know something, you're going to be afraid of it. Fear of tropical diseases, distrust of strangers. What are those people going to think of us there? And this quote is from many young people, from 6 to 18. Ew. They just, being outside is not their thing. And of course, El Chupacabra is around every corner. So those are perceptions we have to overcome. But even though those perceptions are there, there's still interest. So, things that get people over that hump is, having an event that's low cost or free. If you have 10 people and you're charging $7, $8, $10 per person, that becomes a once a year outing, not, going to the park once a month doesn't become a thing if you're paying $70 every time you go. That's for state parks, kids are free, so that reduces costs a little bit. But if you have a special event, can you charge less to get more people through the door, get that first experience? Large events, safety numbers, literally, some people, if they see it's a big party, they don't want to miss the party and they'll go too. Family friendly events that are intended to be enjoyed by a multi-generational family, a family with grandma and grandpa in tow, or extended family are always good. Having fun, not something, not an event where you have to be studious and quiet and looking at things through magnifying glasses. Boisterous events where you can be loud are good. Following trends, I'll get into that in a little bit. Challenges and competitions. There's been a couple of really successful Get Fit challenges where, in order to complete this, program, you have to go to different nature centers and walk a mile. Those have been very successful. Sometimes competitions, friendly competitions between families. If you go to 10 nature sites during the summer, get a signature in this book, and at the end of the summer, there's prizes for you. You'll be entered into a drawing. That's been popular in the past. Food. If you can have an event that lasts 2 or 3 hours and you're bringing the whole family, and there's snow cones available, or street food trucks, bonus. That's no brainer. This photo, you have archery over here on the right. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the two adults on the right, their families had already done the archery, and these ladies were convinced to try it. So I think that's grandma in the white, and then mom in the orange there. The photo on the bottom, I think that's yoga in the park, and a very successful yoga morning at the McAllen Nature Center that day. Activities that are safe and attended by others, maybe just a little bit exciting too. Night hikes are very popular. 2 summers ago, summer 2019, we do our night hikes regularly. It's a little bit scary because you're at night, but you have a ranger with you, so you feel safe. We have lots of regulars at our night hike, and August of 2019, right before the school year started up, we had 150 people showed up to 150 people showed up to a night hike, and there's so many regulars that the regulars took the newbies and took them out, and because 150 people is way too many people for one volunteer and one park staff. So the group by themselves split up and took new people out. So it's a lot of fun. And somebody proposed to their fiance that night too during a night hike. So anyway, very successful. School group events, large events, Coastal Expo in Edinburgh. They have 2,000 or 3,000 kids over 2 days. That's a very large, successful event. And of course, field trips. Pre-COVID, we get 2,000 to 3,000 kids going through on field trips through Estero Llano Grande State Park, and sometimes that is the gateway for the parents to create that first experience, because the child went, he had a lot of fun, very interesting, and the child drags the parents to a park they've never been before to try it. These are a couple more large events. Spooky Science Fest, I'll get into it a little bit more. Planta Nativa, they created a kind of a date night thing for adults where you have food vendors, you have people selling artisanal things having to do with native plants. You have, wine and drink. Leave the kids at home, go to this nice social gathering for adults. And oh, by the way, there's a native plant presentation at night. It's kind of a neat way to get new people at sites. Real reforestation, that's where you get couple hundred folks planting plants to revegetate the valley, which is great. Bike rodeos, this was a free event hosted for local families to get kids bicycling safely. And the people got to go to a new place. They got to enjoy biking on the road with no cars. And for this event, there's 6 or 7 families, and none of them had been to the state park before. So we tried something new, and we got a lot of new folks in here. So theme-based events, zombie survival series. We made the Edinburgh Birding Center, we helped out, but they had volunteers dress up as zombies, chasing around people to different stations. And the people had about 20 minutes to learn, or 20, 30 minutes to learn a new activity, like edible plants, how to go fishing with hardly any tools, how to build a fire, and then a small army of zombies would chase you, and they'd stop chasing you right around the time you got to the next station. So it's a lot of fun. I think they had 400 people showing up to that. Is it weird to have, 30 zombies screaming at a nature site at night? It is, but there's 400 people, and maybe 350 of those people had never been to that place before. Fairy Fest, same thing. Dress up your kids, or the kids dress up as fairies and princesses and knights. Lots of fun, and 600, 800 people over 2 days enjoying the outdoors, looking at butterflies and enjoying nature. Jolly Night Hike, it's a night hike. Santa comes on. Santa, 2 weeks before Christmas, he comes down to the valley and he goes on a night hike to enjoy the night, to enjoy nature at night with a ranger. The 5K run. I think I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but 5Ks are very popular, and it's a neat kind of intersection between the park and people. So what questions do we ask ourselves? And some of these questions you could ask yourself too for chapter projects. So for Spooky Science Fest, this is kind of a map. Our headquarters is that building. The events are around a pond. You can see light towers there to keep everything nice and lit up at night. So what's popular? Okay, this year, dinosaurs are popular. So let's make an event that talks about alligators, birds, the dinosaurs, or the animals that are kind of related to dinosaurs in a way. So how can we make something that's popular relevant today? And how can we tie it to our mission? So here, our tagline for this event: everyone knows dinosaurs went extinct long ago, or did they? And of course, we have an alligator there, which is basically a modern dinosaur. Yeah, so this event, I think we had 1,400 people, 1,200 people at this one. Many of these people had never come before. And of course, we have other non-thematic things like fishing, archery, other things that people can enjoy outside. So what activities can we tie into the theme? Who can we invite? We can't do this by ourselves. Master naturalists volunteer for this a lot. Are there any local businesses that we can give them an activity in the can? They can talk about, their place. They can do an activity. We create a new partner within the community. They might bring new folks. So who can we invite? And of course, very important, what food vendors should we get? That's probably like the most important thing for this. Some of the comments that we've had, especially after Spooky Science Fest, y'all are doing this next week too, right? So people enjoy it so much. I guess they don't realize it takes 4 months to plan. They want to do it again the next week, which means they enjoyed it. Somebody told me I took my kids when they were teenagers, and we still talk about that night. This was 10 years after the Spooky Science Fest that they attended. So, so they had a lot of fun, and those memories last. The most recent one that we did pre-COVID, we took local legends like the Chupacabra and La Llorona, and we tied it to the animals that they were probably based off of. So we took local folklore from the valley and we created this this event, which is really neat. Some pictures on the right, dressed as a skeleton, is a local chemistry teacher from local college, and they're making slime for the kids. And you can't have a Halloween event without a costume party. So here's the contestants, and I believe, I don't know if you can guess who won, but I think the lady, the headless little girl, or the headless lady won. She's the tall one right there in the flower skirt. And anyway, I think that one won first place. Lots of fun. 5K runs. What do we ask ourselves? Safety, first of all. Is it safe to have this event? User conflict. What time of year should we have this? What time of day would be good to have a run? You know, what time of day would be good to have 1,000 people running through a park? Early morning for safety. Time and location of birders. We can have one user group that wants a quiet place with birds. You know, we have to steer these people running through the park away. So we have to take that in mind and kind of keep everybody, you know, in separate places. Does it cause a disturbance to the park? It does, for a couple hours, maybe 2 hours. But is it bringing new people to the park? Yes, it is. 90 to 95% new people into the park. Can we put in thematic or interpretive elements? I mean, just for that, if you're a runner, you pay $25, $5 of it goes to the state park. The rest goes to the organizers. We're just the host of it. And you get a t-shirt and the cool medallion. I mean, I would run my first 5K just for the medal, just for the medallion. And a lot of people did. It's very successful. And the thing I like about this is we have the 5K, and between, you know, if you were to come that morning at 11:30, you would have never known that there was 600 runners at the park that morning, because they come in, they run, they have fun, they take off, and then they come back. So some of the quotes for these kinds of events: this place is beautiful, we're coming back. And one person said, I forgot the first quote, I was tired on the run, but when I saw the sign about alligators, I ran faster, which is, again, that exciting but safe kind of element that gets people's curiosity, and we do see a lot of folks coming back. So with some of these, I talked about the stair step to stewardship and advocacy. We talked about these steps. So for Master Naturalists, in my opinion, you know, I think Master Naturalists care for and care about, and they're stewards. But when we do outreach and when we talk to people that are not, I guess when we're talking to folks that are different than ourselves, or we want to welcome new folks into the group, whether it's, you know, different race, ethnicity, religion, sex, you know, whatever it is, you know, there are certain things that we can do to help welcome them and create those experiences, the awareness and understanding. You know, at an outreach event, during volunteering, you know, there's always something we can do. So I put in some questions for you to think about for yourself or for your chapter. So, experience. What can you do to create a good first experience? You know, can you be more welcoming? Can you be, you know, I don't know, just what can you do? Just keep that in mind. What can you do differently here to create awareness? You know, sometimes, and I have this a little bit more in another slide, sometimes you have to think out of the box. For us, we're always looking for new opportunities. We had some folks coming over. He just texted me yesterday. I'm going to hurry up here, but there's some folks that really want to have a horror movie nights at the park because it's outside and nature can be scary sometimes, you know, because it's dark, you never know what's in there. You know, if we do this, it might be 30, 40 folks once a month that have never been to the park. It's outside, it's peaceful, and if they see a tarantula, you know, while they're watching a scary movie, you know, crawling on the ground, they're going to get scared, but it's also a really cool experience to see a tarantula alive and wild out in nature. Understanding, newbie questions are okay. Honesty is what counts. You know, whether it's, you know, how do you fish? You know, or why are you looking at birds? Why are birds important? You know, why should I not kill the snake? As long as you're honest and not judgmental, I think, you know, that understanding can be created. And sometimes that's challenging, but, you know, a little patience goes a long way. That's, you know, that's where you get to caring about, because you have common goals and you create that understanding. So you're caring about the resource. Care for, that's where you get a new TMN master naturalist for the chapter, because, you know, if in your area you get folks that are new to this, they don't know anything about nature, and now you have somebody that wants to care for it. And it's like, hey, you know what? Well, we have this whole organization. That's what we do. We care for these places, and we work with these partners that do a lot of positive things for the natural resources in our area. And that leads to stewardship and advocacy, because now you have a steward and an advocate for your chapter, for your site. So I'm going to round this up here to try to get it to 1 o'clock in case you all have to do something else at 1. So to create that awareness and understanding, welcome the new folks and keep an open mind. Be patient. Lots of head scratching questions. Know that snake will not kill you and your children, so don't kill it. It's actually a good snake. Be creative. Jam the square peg into the round hole with board approval. I think I was talking to Tony or Michelle and Mary Pearl. TMN at a horror convention. You know, can you have a booth that says natural born killers, which sounds really cool for a horror convention, and you're talking about venomous animals or poisonous plants or something. Budge. So is your no because really that big a deal? You know, are you willing to budge a little bit, you know, do something out of the ordinary to, you know, to welcome somebody in, or to, you know, make that first step to getting folks that are new to your group. Create positive experiences. So just taking an extra minute to explain something, or, you know, just take an extra minute to take some extra care in explaining or making people feel more comfortable goes a long way. Pioneers bring settlers. So sometimes you have a group that is new to an activity, and you always have the pioneering folks that are willing to try. It's like with iPhones, you know, you always have the person that has to have the new iPhone 2000, you know, like they're the pioneers, and a lot of people rely on those pioneers to say, hey, you know what, that iPhone 2000 works great. So they bring in more folks. And depending on the community, you know, those pioneers, if they have a good time, they'll tell their friends and they'll bring more people. if we have time, I have a story about this that a friend related to me regarding pioneers bringing settlers, if we want to get into that. Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention this book. This is a really good book. It's very kind of similar to what we're doing to try to bring people into nature. This is an invitation to the party. I'm still working through this book, but I really like it. And this is inviting people to the arts and culture community. So it's really neat. Okay, sorry. Go with what you know. So you don't have to be a nature expert, as y'all know. Within Master Naturalist, you do what you like doing, what drives you. Everybody has different passions. So if you like fishing, you can you can teach people how to fish. Camping. My first camping trip, I was 25. So, it would have been awesome to for somebody to teach me how to set up a tent, because when I was doing it, I did it, with a friend, and he taught me how to put up a tent. I've never done that before. Outdoor cooking too. Outdoor cooking is universal, and if you can cook something pretty well, I mean, everybody likes to eat. Who doesn't like to eat, right? Those are always popular, and folks want to learn. Folks like having new experiences. They like having fun, and I think if you can create that common ground at first, you could be the change. So, if you create that common ground, you start that stair step and get folks in the fold for the future. So yes, the last thing, be the change. Take some of these things and hopefully, whatever group you're interested in. What we've done in the Valley, we've budged, we've been patient. We get things approved that are kind of weird, but it pays off in dividends because we've got lots of new folks into the parks and into nature. I think I ran a little long. Do we have time for questions or what's going on here?
Yeah. Hey, Javier, that was fantastic. We absolutely have some time for questions if you've got a little bit more time for us.
Sure.
You've got great kudos coming in from the chat room. I recognize some names of some local master naturalists in your chapter that are appreciating your expertise here. I had a question that I was curious about. Some of the space that you've made for non-natural experience participants or first-time natural experience participants by hosting events that are non-nature focused, like the runs and the film nights. What do you see as your return rate for some of those participants, and how do you know that those are events that they make those connections to, or how do you intentionally put nature in front of them to hope that they make that connection to come back?
Well, I think for the first question, what's the return rate? One of the things that when we did this, part of this for a keynote speech, the other keynote speaker was David Case with that Nature of Americans, and he was like, "Man, we should do a case study for what you're talking about." And I wish we did, because it's sometimes it's hard to gather data. It's a lot of anecdotal stuff, but I know for a lot of these events, for example, I can't tell you 20%, or 10%, because sometimes the return rate might be, somebody going to an event in 2015 and they might not come back for another 5 or 6 or 7 years. Some people do come back. I know one family, the mom didn't want her twin kids to, they were about to get into middle school. They didn't want the twin kids to go, hang out with the wrong crowd. So she spent the summer, she went to a park. She really liked it. And then they spent the summer going to different parks. And now those kids are in college. and they're regular park users. And that was all from an interpretive program where I think they were the only participants. But yeah, but the return rate varies. It's a lot of anecdotal times that, the kids tell us, hey, my son was here and now we're here. So it's hard to judge, but we do get a lot of folks coming back. Forgot the second half of your question.
Yeah, the second question was more of when you're creating those types of events,
Oh,
are
right.
there ways that you put intentional interactions in front of them? You kind of alluded to that a little bit, but what are
Right.
other ways that maybe Master Naturalists can help to plug into some of those non-nature events and make them nature oriented?
So, yeah, right. So for example, the Spooky Science Fest where we're talking about local legends. So the poster had an owl because there's a local legend of the Lechuza, which is basically an owl that's really a witch, and it flies around. And if you see a barn owl on top of your house, that means that you or your relative is going to die. So for that event, we had a big booth and or big area that was just about owls. So the Master Naturalists had helped out at that. They talked about they had owl pellets that people could dissect. We taught the Master Naturalists quickly how to help dissect owl pellets. We had owl specimens there. So, the kids were dressed up as Spider-Man and Superman, but they were dissecting owl pellets, and it wasn't, so yeah, and there's subtle ways and non-subtle ways to do that. And, bonus, it's part of, one thing is getting them to the place, for that experience. And honestly, sometimes the experience is a bad experience. They might come to a night hike for the first time, it's full of mosquitoes, but they know the park is there and maybe they'll come back when there aren't mosquitoes, but they're just aware of that. So it's all about that first experience. And then the awareness is where the Master Naturalists can come in with booths that are educational. Other things that we've done, we've posted 3 by 4 foot signs, interpretive temporary signs all over the place. Just trying to think of what else. Mothing stations, things like that. And honestly, sometimes we might have, for example, an edible plants area. And we have an edible plants expert, but that expert can't handle 30 people at once. So Master Naturalists, 2 or 3 Master Naturalists can definitely help that one person talk to these folks and basically repeat the same thing over and over for 2 hours. But, everybody's interested in a plant that can kill you, like coyotillo. So yeah, that's how we can incorporate nature into these non-nature events. For 5Ks, same thing. Where people have a refreshment station, we'll set up a booth and we'll just have animal pelts. So people, either they're waiting for the runner to come back, their brother or whatever, so they have time to kill, or afterwards they're getting the refreshments, they're waiting for the award ceremonies, and here's a table with information about the park. Here's a table with information about alligators. So.
Very cool. There was one other question that I saw that I'd be curious to maybe get Tony. Thank you for coming on camera. Perfect timing. I'm kind of stealing part of your question too. You were talking about community leaders in the chat a little bit, Tony, and helping to use community and cultural leaders within those communities to bring folks into the park and creating those kind of safe examples of drawing the rest of the community in. What are ways that y'all have done that and seen that successful, that Master Naturalists can emulate some of that? Or what are ways that you've taken nature from the park, natural experiences from the park, and put them into those cultural communities to encourage them to come back to the park? Is that too much? Too big?
No. Actually, Javier, I was wondering, because I think a good network that Javier's been included in is your leadership group here in the Valley that you go out on on trips with. Maybe you could speak a little bit about what that organization is, who's involved with it, and that may give folks an idea of their, their colleagues in their areas that they could reach out to and try to build those networks.
Yeah, so if you're talking about the RGV Nature Partnership, a while back we realized that there was so many nature centers that it's better to collaborate instead of compete. So we created a loose partnership where it's basically a common area for people to talk and share information. There isn't a president or anything like that. It's just sharing information and getting people on board. So that way, if you needed support, you know who to contact, who to reach out to, because we're all helping each other. Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
Didn't you have a group that had like chambers of commerce and stuff in it?
Oh, right. So yeah, there's another one. There's Leadership Mid-Valley. Hold on. There's other groups. There's it'd be really interesting. There a lot of folks through the chambers of commerce, they have leadership groups where you're in a program with other local leaders, and you kind of tour the valley, tour the area, and you get to see the different aspects of that community. That'd be really interesting for a master naturalist to join that, because man, the connections you make with those folks is amazing. The other thing, I'm involved with there's a bicycle and pedestrian group. Is that the one you're talking about? Where we plan? No, that's not it. I'm trying to think of which one.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. So with that one, again, square peg into a round hole. With the RGV partnership, we sometimes we branch out to get information for other sites. So I'm on a committee that represents parks and trails in the valley for the group that helps plan cycling trails in the valley. So there's grant funds that are available, and I help review that, and my job is to make sure that the planners that are planning where roads and streets and bridges are going to be in the next 30 years, that they keep nature centers in mind. Some of those planning committees, they do have room for public comment, and they're always looking for members, so can a master naturalist group volunteer for a nature site by being on the committee? Maybe. That's a square peg in a round hole. That's where Mary Pearl and Michelle come in. So because it's keeping in mind, you're making connections in the community, and you're making sure that nature is kind of kept in mind with a lot of these decisions. So.
And one quick thing, another example I think that really master naturalists can think about: if you have a big event that is coming up, reach out to the local restaurants and say, hey, we're expecting people to show up for this event. This is when it is. If they come in with a little card that says, the BioBlitz sent me, or whatever it is, can they get a small discount on their meal? The birding festival down here in the valley did that. When they first started out, they gave people a card that said the Rio Grande Birding Festival sent me, and they didn't get anything for it, but they told people, look, if you go to a restaurant, give them this card, and there was like a little contact info on it. After that first year, a lot of those restaurants reached out to that contact and said, hey, we have no idea who you guys are. We have no idea what this event is. But all of a sudden, our attendance went through the roof, 500% for that week of that event. And are you doing that again? How do I get involved? How do I get my name on there? And all of a sudden, you have restaurants that are putting posters up saying the bird festival is coming, get prepared. They're helping advertise. They're telling their customers about it, and they're excited about it, and they're tied into it. So if you have an event that is going to draw in some folks, give a card out with the name of that event, the group that put it on, whatever, and say, hey, leave this on the table at your next restaurant, or leave this on the table at the hotel. And all of a sudden, you're building networks that you don't even know about yet. They're going to reach out to you next year and say, I don't know who you guys are, but a lot of your folks came to us and we really want to continue this. And that can really help build that relationship and build that network in a way that doesn't really require a lot of work on your end.
Hey, I have one question real quick. Or one comment. I'm looking through the chat here. There was a question about formal reconciliation. Like one quick story. So the town of Mission, the entire town would show up to Benson State Park when it was Easter. The entire town celebrated Easter within Benson State Park. But in 2004, the decision was made to not allow any more vehicles inside the park because the park was going to become a World Birding Center. Lots of negative feedback from the community about that, because all of a sudden the town couldn't celebrate Easter the way it had celebrated it for the past 50 years. So while I worked there for 4 years, there's lots of folks that said, hey man, y'all turned us away. Like, y'all turned your back on the community. How could we overcome that? Well, I think there is a lot of teaching the community. Like, the park is still here and the park is still special. It's just the way that you enjoy it is different. And this new way is actually really nice, because now when you're walking with your family, you don't have to worry about a car coming over and, almost hitting your family as you're walking through the park. The way we did this, we were doing large events. We're having star parties for the Perseid meteor shower. Perseid meteor shower was just 5 days ago. Hopefully y'all looked up. But yeah, these events, 800 people. My brother and his partner, it was their first date, and they still talk about that night. They're married now, but there's a lot of folks that, they thought the park was closed, and having these big events invited them back. And, is there reconciliation? Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes people hold grudges. I'm one of them for a lot of things, but sometimes there is. And, there's, if the park did not have events where they invited the community, would that community be missing out on a wonderful state park in their neighborhood? So there is ways to reconcile, and there's ways to think about that. But it all comes from listening to folks and having the conversation. Like, if you have to have a tough conversation, so be it. And that's why these talks are so important, because they teach you how to have those tough conversations, and some pointers in getting those conversations started. So anyway, that's why it was really fun to do this, guys.
Yeah,
I'm gonna drop real quick. I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. If y'all have other questions or want to keep on talking, email me.
That's
Okay?
great.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And you wrapped it up just perfectly, because really that is the goal of these Be the Change series webinars, and the playbook that we're building is to create resources for some of those tough conversations, or those introspective looks at how we as a Master Naturalist community interact with the communities around us. And so I just wanted to say thank you for your time today and your presentation. It was excellent. I grabbed a few screenshots. I know Tony grabbed a few screenshots as well. And we're going to get this recording posted for those who are with us still. We'll get this recording posted later today or early tomorrow. And Tony, do you have any final thoughts as we close this out?
Thanks, Javier, for stepping in. And I hope everyone can kind of see, even though Javier was talking about the Hispanic community here in the Rio Grande Valley, a lot of these things are universal, right? People want to have fun, they want to make memories with their families, and they want to be safe. So how do we do that in our communities, and how do we reach out to those people in a way that makes sense? And I hope Javier helped bridge that gap a little bit.
Excellent. Well, thank y'all both so very much for your time today. And for the Master Naturalists with us, thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see you next month.